Hey everyone, so I've tried to make these videos online and I teach people about neuroscience topics that I think are interesting, and I've just completed my PhD in neuroscience. And because I think it's quite interesting, and also because I've got a few comments asking me to, I'm actually going to make a video explaining what happened during the process of my PhD, whether I would recommend it, do I think other people should do one, and usually I spend a lot of time uh, researching, planning, thinking about exactly what I'm going to say, thinking about how to put it across and what things to draw. You can maybe go check out some of my other videos if you want to see that, but this is going to be much more rudimentary, just me talking, because I feel like I don't need to prepare. It's 4 years of my life, the last 4 years of my life, and amazing things happened. I loved it, I laughed, I cried, I had so many emotions, and I just wasn't gonna speak through. So I've come up with a few different key topics I'm going to go through. So I'm going to speak through the application process. I'm going to speak through my first year because that's quite significant. Then what happens in years 2, 3 and 4. What happens during the Viva. What I learned from it. And finally, would I actually recommend you to do it? Because if you clicked on this video, you probably are at least considering doing a PhD. And so maybe some of my experience will be able to be helpful for you. So yeah. Let's just begin. The application process. Applying for a PhD is kind of similar to applying for any other job, really. You look online, and the way it works is supervisors or professors or senior lecturers in university, they will tell the university that they're going to take on new PhD students because it's good for their funding, and then the university knows they're going to educate their students. So they take on funding with the promise of taking on, one or two or however many number of PhD students. And so when it comes time for them to do this, they put a job application online and they put the criteria you need. You normally need an undergraduate degree in a relevant subject. So I did mine in my undergraduate, I did mine in neuroscience at the University of Leeds. And I actually did a master's in musical theatre. So my master's was unrelated to my undergraduate, but my undergraduate, along with a couple of years I'd worked in this kind of techie marketing company in London called Brain Labs, together that kind of got me into this PhD. And it's just for each professor to consider application by application whether you have the requirements necessary to complete a PhD. So mostly this is going to be interest in the subject, like a huge amount of interest in the subject, and also grit and evidence of grit and determination across your life, because PhDs are hard. Lots of things in the world are hard, but PhDs are hard, and you need to do the same thing for a long period of time, and you need to persevere through multiple failures and setbacks. So it's actually really important to be able to show that you're the kind of person who, when something annoying happens in your work, you will just keep going, and if it's not working, you will think, how can I fix this, rather than, oh well, it's just not going to work. So they want to see evidence of that mind frame. So yeah, so I got into a PhD. I did mine at King's, and a huge recommendation I would give, if you found a PhD you want to do and a supervisor who's going to be supervising you, what you should do is you should email them beforehand, having read around the project that they have put out an application for, the PhD itself, read about their own research and what things they're interested, and actually send them an email showing that you've read around the subject to show that level of interest. This is exactly what I did, because then, a lot of these people, they're nerds in a positive way. No offense if you're watching, my supervisors. But, they're nerds and they love their subject. And so if you've actually read their subject, they're excited to talk to you about it. So then it's possible the next stage will be speaking to them on the phone, which is huge. You can show your passion, you can show your interest, you can show your knowledge that you've gained. And that will be really helpful when you actually send off your application, if you decide to do that. It won't just be a cold application. It will be a warm application after you've already spoken to that person. Take notes of what things they mention that you can maybe include in your interview process. So that's a huge recommendation. If you found a PhD you want to do, don't just cold apply. Email the supervisor a personalized, deep, well thought out email asking some more questions about the topic. So the next thing is the interview. So I imagine all universities are a little bit different, but there's going to be similarities. You send in a CV and a cover letter, and then you can get invited to an interview. And so in my interview, they sent me over an academic paper beforehand. So I had to read through that in depth and then present back the results to them and discuss that paper. So they kind of want evidence that you can read an academic paper well and at least try to and be critical and understand it. And the other thing was I needed to create a 10-minute presentation on some research I had done. So I spoke about my undergraduate dissertation research, which was about neurogenesis. So are new brain cells created in the brain? And obviously my interview went really well. I got offered the job and I took it. And so you get paid a stipend. It's not a salary. Although it is just money paid into your account every month, but it's called a stipend because you don't have to pay tax on it. There's also, I saw stuff with you don't have to pay national insurance, you don't necessarily have to pay into a pension. So you are given a stipend to fund you whilst you do your research rather than a salary by the university. But it still counts as, money into your bank account. You can buy eggs and bread with, basically. What happens in your first year? First year of a PhD, again, all probably a bit different, but some similarities. If they're a good supervisor, which is really important, it's really important. I mentioned before about having a conversation with them. They're seeing if they're interested in you doing the PhD, but you should also see if you're interested in doing a PhD with them, because as a PhD student, you'll run into difficulty after difficulty, and that is technically the person with the expertise to be able to help you move past that and build your research project. So they have to be somebody who is attentive, interested, caring, good at explaining things, and then obviously all the common human decency things as well. So if they're not any of those, they're probably not going to be a brilliant supervisor. And some of the most stressed PhD students in a university are the ones without supportive supervisors. Okay, so in your first year, what did I do? Basically for the first year, you're just learning stuff. So my supervisor gave me a bunch of different mini projects to do to teach me skills in Python and MATLAB and understanding MRI acquisition. You can watch some of my other videos to find out what I did in my PhD. But you're basically learning lots of different skills in your first year, and that's the time to really compress the spring, learn as much as you can, to understand as much as you can, after which you will start to build your own project. So I kind of learned how an MRI machine works, I learned some MATLAB coding, I learned some Python coding, I learned some statistical analyses, I learned a little bit about the physics of MRI, and quite a lot about neuroanatomy, because you're looking at different parts of the brain. I was looking at fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging. So anyway, so you're learning lots of different things, okay? It's about generally, not necessarily just me. So you learn lots of different things, and then in years 2, 3 and 4 you will take on ideally your own project. So you'll either be collecting data all from scratch, or you'll kind of go to a massive pre-existing data set and do some large piece of research on it. And what you spend your time doing each day is very dependent. So if you're doing a clinical study, I was running a clinical study, I spent a lot of my time booking in patients, meeting patients, sitting with them whilst they're scanning, doing a little training paradigm I had to do with them. A lot of it's very administrative, and because when you're doing a PhD, you're the everyone. You're the analyst, you are the administrator, you're the coffee maker, you're the everything. You do the entire project, and it's great because you get to own the project, and it's also scary because you own the project. But what's important is to have a clear idea of what you want to do across years 2, 3 and 4, and the end goal you want to get to, because at the end of it you write a thesis. So I have 5 chapters in my thesis. You basically have a large introduction chapter and then kind of 4 data chapters where you're discussing the data that you've actually produced. Okay, so at the end of a PhD, you complete your viva, where you get 2 external professors who come in and they just grill you for about 3 or 4 hours on your thesis you've written and looking through each chapter to make sure, number one, that you actually are the one who's written it, but also you have thought out why you've done your statistical analyses the way you do, why you designed your experiments the way you did, to make sure it's scientifically rigorous. And then you get a PhD, and then you can go do whatever you want afterwards in a related field or an unrelated field. So my Viva was about 3 months ago now, and I actually am now a biology teacher in a school, in a lovely school, which I'm really enjoying. So I completed my Viva about 3 months ago, and now I'm Dr. Zachary Cortex, which feels weird to say. So, a PhD. Should you do one? The answer is yes and no. It really, honestly, sounds like a cliche. It depends on what you want. There are advantages and disadvantages to doing a PhD, just like every single other thing in life. Advantages are you get 4 years to just learn stuff. I learned so much across my PhD. Comparing myself to what I knew before my PhD started in terms of knowledge, science, coding, statistical analyses, how science works, how clinical experiments work, I learned so much. I also had a huge amount of fun doing it. So that's one massive advantage. You learn loads. You do own your time a lot more than your friends who are working a 9 to 5. Like, you can decide what you're doing each day. If you've got a good supervisor, they won't micromanage you. So the lifestyle is actually set up really nicely to be fun and enjoyable and not stressful. It's actually a really enjoyable experience to work on a project. It's super stressful sometimes, but if you've got a good supervisor, they'll help you move past that. Negatives. The money's not great in comparison to what you could make if you go do, I don't know, lots of other different jobs. Other negatives, you are part of that cycle where you get to the end of 4 years and you either have to enter scientific research world, which is very exciting, but also has downsides to it. A little bit harder for me to say because I've only seen people in those positions. I haven't actually been in that position myself. And there's also the element that, and this is probably maybe the biggest downside, is that whilst it's great that you get to learn so much, you learn so much about a very, very specialised thing. Now, lots of those skills will be transferable to other places, but lots of them also won't be as well. There's not really any jobs in the world which require deep understanding of fMRI analysis apart from scientific research jobs. So that's the thing to bear in mind, that your skill set becomes very, very specific, which is really, really good. But there's also downsides to it because it's not so applicable to a direct job as soon as you get out. But obviously lots of interesting similar skills you'll have that may help you get another job. I've got a new job now fully because of lots of the things I learned whilst doing my PhD. So yeah, I hope this little ramble was helpful. Please leave any comments if you have any additional questions or follow up. Yeah, I loved my PhD so much. I wouldn't recommend it to everyone. I would recommend it to lots of people. I guess there's also the reality that you can only really enter into academic clinical research through a university. That's not exactly true. You can do it through a drug company as well, but it is one good route in, and a lot of people with, clinical PhDs go on to work at those drug companies. Yeah, I hope you found that useful. That's just my experience. Obviously, everyone is different. But I thought I'd throw my penny's worth in just a bit more of an informal way. Yeah, if you like neuroscience, please go look at my other videos. I've got hopefully some interesting things out there. And have a great day, and maybe see you in the next one.